So Brokind Nature Reserve, where we are now, is the most species-rich nature reserve for saprosylic beetles in Östergötland, which is the county we're in now. So it's the equivalent of Hallstad, but in Östergötland. It's also very well studied because Niklas Jansson, who Jonas Edin mentioned yesterday, and Jonas, both of them did their PhDs around these areas. So they studied the beetles very well. Jonas did his PhD on the hermit beetle, but Niklas did his PhD on the wood mould boxes. So he did different sorts of recipes in the wood mould boxes and then studied them for what beetles were using them. And what he found was that in the boxes that we had them up in the trees at about 4 meters height. He didn't have them higher because his PhD supervisor was afraid of heights. So they could only have them at 4 meters, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to be involved in the project. And they've discovered that about 70% of the white rot beetle species were found in these wood mould boxes. So what Jonas said yesterday about 70%, it's actually 70% of those that are associated with white rot rather than brown rot. So the majority of the brown rot species were missing from the boxes that he worked on his PhD thesis. So he's now doing some other studies where he's adding pieces of brown rotted wood into the boxes, but also he's doing some work in Germany where they're putting boxes out, allowing them to be colonised and then moving them to try and help expand populations to new sites. So that's not been done in Sweden, and I think it's probably would be considered pretty challenging in terms of our legislation in this country as well. So I think that's why Niklas is doing it in Germany. And he's also tried, you know, these tall ones we saw yesterday, but I think he's discovered that the ones up in the trees, the ones standing on the ground were just the same species anyway, which makes it an awful lot easier for managing them and surveying them. So that was a piece of his results that he had. So this site here is, in its own right, has got a concentration of big old oaks, kind of like we saw when we stopped at lunch yesterday. It's a similar kind of reserve there, but there's a nicer age structure, I think, in this site than perhaps we had at the site where we were yesterday for lunch, where it was kind of just the old oaks. So, I mean, what I suggest here is that you have a wander around and just enjoy this place, because you know, you've seen much of what, and you've had guides about what this is about. But the other thing I wanted to just say really is that in Sweden, we have this oak district, which is used in all marketing, including people buying and selling their houses in this county here. Linköping, the town just another half an hour north of us, is marketed as the oak city. And it's kind of ironic because, you know, they're probably one of the most expansive cities at the moment in terms of new building. And many of their houses are called the Oak House, and they've taken down all the oaks in order to build the houses. But the county's the municipality is extremely active in terms of nature conservation. It's one of the ones that has the most people working with nature conservation, that, you know, of the bigger cities. They have at least 6 people working there working with nature conservation, both on the side of checking all the development work to make sure that it's kind of in line with nature conservation, but also new projects. And Tinnerö, one of the other sites, which if we have time we might stop at, is managed by them. I can't remember the numbers, and I was just going to look up how big this is. It is the most species-rich oak wood pasture in Östergötland, and it's also a remnant of a big estate, which many of these sites in this part of the country are, where, you know, this whole oak protection we talked about, on these estates, they weren't protected. But it was a status symbol to keep them because it meant you were rich enough that you didn't have to sell your oak. So it was a kind of the opposite effect of how it was for the peasant farmers, if you like. And there's several, if you follow this path basically parallel with the road, there's a school up at kind of the top of the hill, and I think that's where some of the biggest oaks are, and you'll find hermit beetle and all the rest of it.